Here's my favorite gambit. It's the Englund Gambit. It starts out with d4, e5, and then they accept the gambit by capturing the pawn, and then you bring your knight out to c6 to attack the pawn, knight to f3 to defend the pawn, and now queen to e7 attacking the pawn. And now they usually play bishop to f4 defending the pawn, and now queen to b4 checking the king, attacking the bishop, and attacking the b2 pawn. And when they play the best move, which is bishop back to d2, you just take the pawn here, attacking the rook, and now here's where they might fall into a trap. If they play bishop to c3 attacking your queen, defended by the knight here, they think they're protecting their rook, but now you play bishop to b4, pinning the bishop to the king, and now it's basically a lost game for white. The worst possible move they can do here is breaking the pin with the queen here, and now you just take the bishop, they take back, and here's checkmate. But they might take the bishop here and realize what's going on, and then you take with the knight, and now the rook is still under attack, so they need to bring the knight out so the queen can defend the rook. Knight to d2. Knight captures c2. The king has nowhere to go. Queen has to capture the knight here, and then you take back with the queen and you're up a queen. The BS Gambit. It starts out with the most popular opening, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. Now you play knight to d4, and if they play knight captures e5, then they're falling for the trap. Now you play queen to g5, attacking the knight and the g2 pawn. They'll play knight captures f7, thinking they fork your queen and your rook, but you play queen captures g2. Now they want to save their rook, so they're going to play rook to f1, but now you play queen captures e4 with check. And if they block with the queen, now you just take the queen with the knight. But if they block with the bishop, you play knight to f3, and that's checkmate in 7 moves. And that's known as the Blackburn Shilling Gambit, the fried liver attack. It starts with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and now with bishop c4, we have the most popular opening in chess. Now if black plays knight f6, you play knight g5, setting up a double attack on f7. If black does nothing, you're going to play knight to f7 and fork the queen and rook, so they must find d5. But now you play e captures d5, and naturally, they're going to capture back with the knight. But now you play knight captures f7, and when the king takes, now you play queen to f3 check, and now it's getting tricky for black. Their best move is king to e6, defending the knight, but putting the king in the middle of the board and making it vulnerable. And then now you play knight to c3, attacking the knight again. However, if instead of going to the middle, the king goes back to g8, then now you have checkmate after bishop captures d5, queen captures d5, bishop e6, and now queen captures e6, checkmate. And now you know Legal's trap. It starts out with e4, e5, then knight f3, knight c6. This is the most common opening in chess. And now we have bishop c4. This is called the Italian game. And black has a lot of options from here, but if they play d6, then they might fall for the trap. After knight c3, bishop g4, pinning the knight to the queen. Now you play h3, and they're usually going to play bishop h5 to keep the knight pinned. But the knight's not actually pinned because after knight captures e5, if they take the queen, now you have checkmate in 2 moves because you have bishop captures f7. Now king has to go to e7, only move, and now knight to d5, and that's checkmate. And it starts with e4, e5, knight to f3. And now you play f5, the Latvian Gambit. The main line is knight captures e5. Here I like to play bishop to c5 because if they take on f5, you sacrifice your bishop, and after the king takes, you play queen to h4 check. And here they might think that king to g1 is safe, but now you play queen to d4, and it's checkmate in 6 moves. This is the first gambit I ever learned. It starts with e4, knight f6, then e5, attacking the knight. Now knight to d5, knight f3, d6, and then bishop to c4, attacking the knight. Knight to b6 moves to safety and attacks the bishop. But now the brilliant sacrifice, bishop captures f7, and after the king takes, play knight to g5 check. They don't want to bring the king to the middle. And if king to e8, we play e6, and black's position is locked down. King to g8, and now queen to f3 threatens mate on f7. The only defense is queen to e8, and now after e6, black is feeling quite cramped. Perhaps h6 to kick the knight away, but now it's checkmate after queen f7 check, queen captures f7, e captures f7 checkmate. Follow me for more checkmate traps. I just got checkmated in 5 moves. It started with e4, and then c6, the Caro Kann. Now knight to c3, and black will play d5. Now you play queen to e2, and they're going to capture the pawn here, and you take back with your knight. Now black wants to play knight to f6, but they're going to notice that you can capture back, and then their pawns will be doubled up. So instead, they might first play knight to d7, so that they can capture back with their knight, but now you have checkmate with knight to d6. And the pawn can't capture because it's pinned to the king. Now hopefully you won't fall for this too, because it's a good one for beginners. It starts out with e4, e5, then knight to f3, attacking the pawn, then knight to c6, defending the pawn. Now you have bishop to b5, getting ready to castle, and knight to f6. Now they castle to get their king to safety, and you play knight to g4, and usually they'll play h3 to kick your knight away, but now you play h5, and they think maybe you didn't notice that your knight's hanging, and they'll just take it, and now, okay, you lost a knight, but their knight's under attack. Where does their knight go? Well, if their knight goes back to e1, now you play queen to h4, and there's no way to stop checkmate. Right here, your queen's coming down to checkmate, so they might play f3, and now you just move the pawn forward, and now there's no way for the king to escape. If they move the rook up to give the king an escape square, you just come back here to h1 and checkmate. It starts with e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. Now thrust forward with d4, and after black takes, recapture with your knight. When black plays f6 to attack the pawn, defend it with knight to c3. Now d6 and bishop to g5. a6 prevents the two knights and bishop from coming forward, and queen to d2 prepares the castle and supports the bishop. Here, black will play knight to d7 to prevent you from taking the knight and ruining their pawns. Now bishop to e2 to develop your last piece, and after g6, bring the knight to d5. This is where they might make a mistake if they play f6, not even realizing that of course you now have knight to e6 attacking the queen. Queen a5 is the only safe square, but now knight to c7 check. King f7 is basically forced, but now knight to d8 check, king g7, and knight e8 check. And usually they'll resign here, but if they play king to g8, you now have checkmate after 4 moves. Follow me for more checkmate traps. The best opening trap for beginners, it starts out with e4, e5, and then you have queen to h5. That's the Wayward Queen attack. And a lot of times beginners here will play pawn to g6, attacking the queen, but now you have queen captures e5, and the king's in check and the rook's under attack. So they'll block the king with the queen, and now you just take the rook and you're up a rook. But if instead they see that the e5 pawn is hanging, they'll play knight to c6, defending the pawn, and now you play bishop to c4. And this is where a lot of players fall into a trap and play knight to f6, attacking the queen, but now you have queen captures f7, checkmate. It starts with the most popular opening, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to c4 makes the Italian game. Common development moves are bishop c5, knight c3, knight f6, d3, d6, and now bishop to g5 to pin the knight to the queen. h6 attacks the bishop, and we'll just take the knight here, because after queen takes, you have knight to d5, attacking the queen, and threatening knight captures c7, forking the king and rook. So now the queen must go back to d8. Now play c3, and you have a good position in an even game, but they might make a big mistake right here and play bishop to e6. Play d4 to attack the bishop. If they trade pawns, the bishop is still under attack. If it goes back, take it, and then you have d5, forking the knight and bishop. If instead they take your knight, you take back with the pawn, and both pieces are under attack. Bishop to b4 check is no good. After king f1, the knight has to move to safety, and now you have queen a4 check, and you win the bishop on the next move. Follow me for more chess traps. It starts with e4, e5, then f4, the king's gambit. They accept the gambit, and you play knight to f3. g5 is the best move, and after bishop to c4, g4, you castle, sacrificing your knight, but when you capture with the queen, you can see that 3 of your pieces are lined up on the f7 square, ready to attack the king. The problem is, the f4 pawn is blocking, and you'd like to take with the queen, but black can play queen to f6 to defend. Now you make another sacrifice with e5. Queen captures e5, and now bishop captures f7, sacrificing the bishop too, to bring out the king. Now you attack the queen with d4. After queen captures d4, block the check with bishop to e3. And if they take the bishop, they lose their queen, because after you take their queen with your queen, they can't take back with the pawn because the rook pins it to the king. Instead, if they try to take more pieces with queen to b2, now you have queen captures f4, and at this point, their best move is to block with the queen, but now you can play queen to c4 check, and whatever they do next, you can play rook takes queen check, and you're winning. Follow me if you want to see more variations of the King's Gambit.